Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good morning. House Bill 1346 arises from a problem that I incurred in my locality this past election cycle. This was the first election cycle locally that we had since the exemption for 50,000 people and less were removed for candidates to file under comment system. So what happened is we had a lot of candidates that did not file correctly. And I can run down the list and I'll just go through the top 2 or 3. They got fined because they did not file correctly. Kamisha Handy for the school board, she got fined $7,100. Now that job pays $3,000 a year. Jackie Phillips is a supervisor. He got fined $4,100. He took no money, spent no money. He was unopposed, and that's the supervisor. My Commonwealth attorney, unopposed, took no money, spent no money, got fined $3,100. So, and I can go on and on down the line. My point is, with this, and even the soil and water candidates got fined. So the way in the comment system, when the exemption was taken away, a candidate to file on the comment system has to open a checking account. So let's say the soil and water districts, which one of them got fined, let me find it down here, like $2,100. Now that job pays nothing. They usually are an associate director first, and then they kind of rise, and you have 2 people running for 2 positions, so they're unopposed. And he got fined $2,100 for a job that pays nothing. So I'm trying to figure out a way that my people, good people, will run for office and not be scared that they're going to get fined and this is the registrar doing the fining. In the past, I think our registrar would babysit them and help them. We had a registrar that was there for 31 years. This is a new registrar that came in. I know some of these went to her and asked if they were exempt. Whether she gave them the right advice or not isn't the issue, because as Susan Beal said, it's their responsibility to do it correctly. I'm just trying to make it where if you are unopposed and you're running for office, you do not want to open a checking account, as in the soil and water districts, that they should be exempt. You file in the beginning to be on the ballot, and at the end, you take no money, you spend no money.
Thank you, Delegate. I think you've made a good case for this. So right now, just to be clear, we have an exemption for under $1,000, but it's still required that you open up a bank account. What this would do would be to take away that requirement, and everything else would be the same as it is currently in the code. So I understand there's nobody here to testify for or against. Right. So do we have any questions from the committee? Yeah. Uber Chair Price.
So I just want to be sure what this looks like, right? So let's say Monday a campaign report was due, right? And they have this exemption, so they did not file it because they didn't have to. And then on Tuesday, they accept a campaign contribution or an in-kind contribution. When does the public find out about what happened on Tuesday?
At that point, there's on line 40, at any time in the campaign, if you start taking money, then you have to file, and then all the deadlines that apply.
So let's say it's in the, Mr. Chair, follow up. Okay, so let's say that the next, like for some folks that aren't on the ballot, the next one isn't until the end of the year. Mm-hmm. So we wouldn't find out until the end of the year that this person had rescinded their exemption and had been taking money potentially for half a year.
Price, can I have counsel explain the current law?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah. So yeah, under the bill, and so under the current law, there's an exemption, and you have to rescind that exemption before you go over the limit. This would apply the same type of rescinding requirements. So if you were going to take any money or spend any money, you'd have to, before you take or spend that money, rescind your exemption. To the delegates question, when would you have to file that information? I don't think, I'm not 100%, but I don't think under the current code you would have to backfile. So you wouldn't have to file the previous, you would have to file the next. So yes, you would be waiting, till the next filing period to file the next report. And that's when you would find out that the person, how much money they took in and how much they expended.
So to be clear, counsel, all this bill does is say, under the current exemption, this would also give you the ability not to open up a bank account. Correct?
That's correct, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Any further questions, Delegate Price?
For council, can you explain again, currently drawn, who would this apply to?
As it's drawn, this would apply to local offices and directors of soil and water conservation districts.
Any follow-up, Delegate Price?
Not at this time.
Okay. Anybody else? Do we have a motion?
Yes,
There's
I have a
no-
motion.
Yes, Delegate Price.
Seeing that the Senate companion did have an amendment limiting this exemption to soil and water candidates, I'm very sympathetic to what is trying to be done, but I would suggest a similar amendment so that we can draw that exemption down a bit.
We have a motion to amend.
So moved. Second.
Okay, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All right, we have a line amendment there. And Patron, are you
Can I
okay with
speak
that?
to the line amendment?
Yes, please.
The problem would still exist that if you took no money and spent no money for a local office, it would still catch them in this catch-22. And that's what I'm trying to avoid, but I mean, I can always come back. We won't have another local election for a couple of years, so if we do the exemption, which is fine for soil and water.
Delegate, I would recommend that you take the deal. Okay. Do we have a motion? We have a motion to move the report as amended, seconded. The clerk will open the rolls. Okay, the clerk will close the roll. This report's with amendment 7-1. Thank you, Delegate.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Next, we've got Delegate Sullivan, 111.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. I'm guessing most of the members of the committee are familiar with the Uniform Code Commission, which is a group of all 50 states send eminent lawyers and scholars to consider potential pieces of legislation that would apply nationwide, or that states could consider adopting for sort of nationwide application. The most famous is the Uniform Commercial Code, which is in all 50 states. You have before you a Virginia version, meaning it's been conformed to Virginia law, of what's called the Uniform Faithful Electors Act. Now, this act was drafted by the Uniform Code Commission years ago, before anyone had ever heard any of the events of the last several years had occurred here in the United States. It's a very common sense, and despite its length, simple bill. It has a lot of words in it simply because we reordered a bunch of existing law. It changes really nothing with existing law except what you will see on page 3. The key paragraph is C, starting at 133. And it stands for the very simple proposition that if someone is elected as an elector during a presidential election, and he or she, pursuant to code, and that's at the very beginning part of this, that's actually on line 26, stands up and takes an oath, I will vote for the person whom the citizens of Virginia have told me to vote for. Well, all the bill does, and this is, as I said, the recommendation of the Uniform Code Commission in paragraph C of 24.2244 is say, you can't change your mind. You have taken an oath, you must live up to your oath, and if you go to the meeting of electors and try to change your vote in any way, you are automatically disqualified, and the existing electors can simply replace you with someone who will live up to their oath. It's all this bill does.
Thank you, Delegate. Do we have any questions for the patron committee? Do we have anybody here to speak in favor? Please come up, state your name. You have 2 minutes.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. I'm Mary Crutchfield, speaking for the League of Women Voters of Virginia. The League of Women Voters considers HB 111 to be essential. We need a code chapter prescribing the processes and requirements for selecting and, if necessary, replacing electors for President and Vice President of the United States, as well as setting forth their duties.
Thank you, Ms. Crutchfield. Do we have anybody else? Anybody speaking against? All right. Any further anybody else have questions? Delegate Mildy. There is somebody online. Hold on a second. I'm sorry. Galen Canoit, you're the one who's online. Thank you. You've got 2 minutes.
Yes, my name is Galen Canoiton. I'm with the Virginia NAACP, and we support this bill for the reasons that was already stated. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Canoiton. Okay, sorry about that.
No problem, Mr. Chair. Is there any provision in here that would give an out to an elector if there were any kind of irregularities or fraud or something like that, or if they thought there was in the election?
Mr. Chairman, Delegate Mildy, the answer is no. This is absent some court action and something that would be frankly beyond Virginia. It's very simple. You take an oath to vote for Joe or Susie Q. You must vote for Joe or Susie Q. It's not up to that elector to decide, I'm concerned about this, I'm concerned about that. And I really want to emphasize, this has nothing to do with recent events. This bill has existed. I can't tell the committee exactly when it was drafted, but it was drafted well before the events of 2020.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Any further questions? Delegate, last word.
Ready to go.
Move to report as, move to report.
We have a motion to report in a second. The clerk will open the roll. Clerk will close the roll. Thank you, Delegate. Your bill reports 8-0.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Good morning.
We've got Delegate Wiley, 1441.
Morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. HB 1441 is in front of you. Quite simply, it requires any person applying to register to vote to provide proof of United States citizenship. I know that council sent me some information that stipulated that, this is more of a federal matter. It's in their arena right now, and I know it's going through some cases regarding this issue or concern for localities throughout the country. This matter was brought to me from the Board of Supervisors. Granted, I don't think it's stipulated by request, but in Frederick County, currently Winchester, according to the Weldon Cooper report, the report just came out in an article in Winchester Star stating that we're the fastest growing area in the state of Virginia and have been in the recent past. And, with this proof of citizenship, you have a list of requests for the applicant to show proof of citizenship. We have concerns about it in our area and the growth. And so I do have a gentleman from Frederick County who would like to speak to this matter, and I appreciate you considering it.
Please come to the podium.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, members of the subcommittee, I'm Tom Dick, the legislative liaison for Frederick County. We appreciate Delegate Wiley putting this bill in. The Board of Supervisors had a meeting at their December 13th meeting. They voted unanimously to make this request, and they think the voter registrars do a great job securing the election, but they felt like more was needed to be done, and so they had raised this issue, and we appreciate the consideration of the committee.
Thank you. Thank you for coming down. So, yeah, Delegate, do you have anybody else? I know there's probably a lot of people that will want to testify against. Why don't we bring them up?
Mary Crutchfield, League of Women Voters of Virginia. The League of Women Voters strongly opposes HB 1441. Many citizens do not have proof of citizenship, and asking them to find it to register to vote is an impediment to voting. The League conducts many voter registration drives. We do not see many people carrying around their birth certificates. It also discriminates against people who can't afford to travel overseas and do not have passports. There is no evidence that non-citizens vote in any significant numbers. This bill would suppress voting. The League of Women Voters opposes this bill because it suppresses voting. It is very unlikely that a non-citizen would even attempt to register to vote, since if caught, they would be risking being convicted of a felony. Voter fraud is a felony. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Crutchfield. I know other states have attempted to do this. Those laws were rendered unenforceable by federal district courts. The decisions were left in place on appeal with the Supreme Court. So I know this is unconstitutional in all likelihood. Why don't you go ahead?
George, Tram Wynn with New Virginia Majority. We oppose this bill. As Chair Kresek mentioned, this has been litigated in several instances in several states. It's not the first time Virginia has seen proof of citizenship legislation. It also, I would tell folks that if we were to do this, Virginia Department of Elections would have to set up a bifurcated voter registration system in Veris, which is being upgraded right now. But the state would have a proof of citizenship requirement for state elections, and then for federal elections, proof of citizenship is not allowed. So we'd have to maintain two separate voter registration lists, one for state and local elections and one for federal elections. So this is a very complicated matter, and I strongly urge you to vote down this bill. Thank you.
Thank you. I know as son of immigrants that my parents, when they were in their at the end of their lives, their passports have been lost, God knows where. It would have been very difficult for them to find their naturalization papers, and it would just made it, and they never missed a vote. They were proud U.S. citizens, never missed a vote. Do we have a motion? Do we have any further questions from the? Is there somebody else? I'm sorry. Come on up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Clarabelle Wheeler, Albemarle County, member of the local electoral board there. I speak strongly in favor of having some recognition, some notification of citizenship. All clubs have privileges. Living in the United States is a privilege, and being a citizen, duly sworn in, whether you were here for 5 generations or whether you did a naturalization last week, being a citizen should mean something. And being able to choose our leaders by voting should be restricted only to citizens. There are means of doing that, and this bill is one of them. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We have somebody online. I will mention that the law right now only allows citizens to vote. Who do we have online? Okay, Ms. Galen Connaughton, you're up.
Yes, Galen Connaughton with the Virginia NAACP. We strongly oppose this bill for the reasons already stated. This is a form of voter suppression, which we strongly oppose. Thank you.
Thank you, Galen.
Mr. Chair, I move lay on the table.
We have a motion to lay it on the table. We have a second. All those, we're going to open the roll. The clerk will close the roll. The bill has been laid on the table. Vote 5-3. Thank you, Delegates.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee.
All right, we have, who do we have next? All right, Delegate Walker.
Good morning. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Bill that you have before you is HB 1315, but before I present this bill, I'd like to just share a little bit. Okay, all right. Thank you. Late last year, before New Year's, I got a call from my wife while I was at the store. My wife was telling me about a half a dozen local police cars were sitting outside my home. Officers asked my wife and daughter to leave the home because of a swatting call that was placed against me. These false emergency calls are ever increasing threat, particularly to elected officials. The report showed that elected officials across the country have been targeted by a large number of these false threats. Many of these individuals placing swatting calls or doing so with easily accessible information from public available data sites such as our GIS database. Mr. Chairman, HB 1315 seeks to hopefully provide an additional layer of protection for elected officials in the Commonwealth of Virginia who have been subject of these false emergency calls. Under current law, the Commonwealth shall not publish on the internet the personal information of any public official if the court finds that, one, there exists threats of that official or persons who resides with them that would result in the publication from this information, and two, the official has demonstrated a reasonable fear of risk to the safety or the safety of someone who resides with them that will result in a publication from information on the internet. After the threat against my family, I looked to utilize this law to protect not only my family, but further threats. Imagine, to my surprise, when I found out that elected officials in the Commonwealth are not considered public officials according to the code. If this bill is passed, it would add the definition of public officials to the code. That was only public officials. Any elected individual for the purpose of prohibiting the Commonwealth from publishing their public information. Nothing would change the code other than elected officials will receive the same opportunity that is afforded to other officials in the Commonwealth. They will still have to make a demand in writing and receive an order from the court if it shall be effective for the 4 years or that period that they're elected for. So that is the request before us.
Thank you, Delegate. Yes. Delegate Price.
Yes, I'm very sympathetic, and I'm extremely sorry that your family went through that. We've had a member on our side that had to deal with that with 5 small children as well. Some of us have been doxxed. So please understand my questioning is not without sympathy to what you're trying to do. My concern is when we went through redistricting, when we went through candidate eligibility, a lot of that is based off having to live within a district where you reside. Do you have a way for someone to be able to find out the veracity of someone's address if it's not available to the public?
I'm sure that there's other ways outside of the GIS system that people can find that information, but normally if you are looking to find out, say, where an officer that maybe pulls you over for whatever violation, and this actually happened in Lynchburg. We had an officer that went through the court proceedings, the individual was charged, later came back, found the address of this local police officer, and burned his house down. That actually happened. So how far do we go in allowing public information out here as elected officials? This could happen to any one of you sitting up here today. I mean, this is a crazy world in which we live. I have a wife and a daughter I love very much. And I think the simplest thing we can do is do what we can when we're here in Richmond, trying to ensure that there is somebody not trying to cause these threats. I mean, I don't want to get too emotional, but I was not very happy when I received those. And then we followed up with the local police. They did a thorough investigation. But that's simply, all we're asking of the code is just elected officials, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Delegate. Thank you. Delegate Price, follow up?
Yes, ma'am.
My concern, again, with the utmost sympathy, having had police officers in front of my house and my relative's house, I definitely understand. I think the difference between, I think the difference between our situations, we choose to go into the public arena and we ask for people to vote for us. And so I think it's an apples to oranges comparison when we're talking about law enforcement. But I guess I would then just want to see if the delegate had a solution to we fill out paperwork on day one in order to run for office. This says throughout the entire 4 years. So what is the mechanism in order to maintain that that delegate, let's use us for example, still resides within the district they were sworn to serve if that information is not publicly available?
Mr. Chairman, if I may address, as I understand it, you have to petition the court to have your name redacted, just like a police officer in localities, which they can do now. But that just applies to the law enforcement there. So as we are servants of the people out here, this is just something we'd have to do, go through the courts and make sure that, and this only for a limited period of time. So in other words, if we're here for more than 4 years, we'll still have to go back before the court, petition them to keep our address or our personal information redacted, at that point. I don't know if that answers your question, but it's not like we all get a free, nobody knows who we are, where we are. It's something that we actually have to go before the court, and that's in the code right now.
Delegate Phillips.
And Mr. Chair, so, even now, I guess the assumption would have to be that the GIS systems are perfectly updated, always on time, which I'm sure they're not in every locality and every location anyway. Secondly, it would seem that I understand, the public being privy to that information, but it seems like, the officials and the registrar's office and other places could be in charge of that information as part of their responsibilities. And then secondly, you have a lot of people currently, as we all know, we've seen some cases of members that are here in session with us now that have had disputed things over where they live. And so, many people own multiple properties. I don't know which one they sleep in at night. So, while I understand the concern, and we certainly want people to live in their district, I think that's an issue already. I know at least 2 members, I've read articles about them in the paper that are here with us now. And both of them are allowed to be seated and they're allowed to be here. So while it's certainly a concern, I don't think it's a new concern. So I would be in favor of this bill.
Thank you, Delegate. Anybody in the audience speaking in favor? Any in the audience speaking against? Come on up. In favor? Come on up. You just want to raise your hand? Okay, thank you. Any other further questions from the committee? We have Delegate Commerce-Fowler.
I had a question, Mr. Chair, about I know my address is not accessible. The registrar classified me as a protected voter, and I don't know if that was an option, and maybe this is more of a question for council, but if that's available, that would also cover the publicized address. Would that be correct?
Council.
Mr. Chair, Delegate, so I believe, yes, if that's available, I think that's only available, though, under 24.2, under certain circumstances. So if you've had a protective order or one of those other things. So this applies more broadly to public officials. So this would be a larger swath of people who don't, for instance, have a protective order or don't have some other, other specific issue that's allowed under 24.2. And then, yes. And also, that provision in 24.2 would prevent giving out that address at all on that voter's address as a voter. This would just prevent the publication online of those addresses, so it wouldn't prevent any kind of FOIA of addresses, say, on a candidate form.
Delegate, I also am sympathetic, and I've put cameras all over my yard and garden and house because of similar situations, and had spent a few $1,000s. It is something we choose to do to represent the community. Most everybody in my district knows where I live. I grew up there, same house. They come by my house. They're probably visiting right now, and so it's my wife is has to be my home office representative. if you will, when I'm not there, when we're down here in Richmond. And I think I'm also a little concerned that this bill is in the code section that normally we would get it over at courts or some other. But I think my feeling is, and I'm going to not support this bill just because I think it needs a little bit more time. But I would recommend you coming back next session with this if it doesn't pass. But that's going to be my vote. It's going to be a no. But it's up to the committee to decide. Is there a motion? Do we have a
Motion to lay the bill on the table?
Second.
Motion laid on the table in a second. The clerk will open the roll. Okay, the clerk will close the roll. We have the bill has been laid on the table, vote 5-3. Thank you, Delegate.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee members.
Thank you, Delegate Kent. Whichever bill you want to start with, just let us know.
Okay, thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think I would like to start with House Bill 1358, if that's okay.
The floor is yours.
Thank you. This bill, 1358, regards split precincts. It's come to me by some of our county administrators that have to deal with split precincts. We understand split precincts are not an ideal situation. However, they do still exist. So my bill would strike and allow that if there's no change to a split precinct, that we would allow the waiver to not happen every year, that they could be exempt from that waiver every year. Currently, if you have a split precinct district, your registrar and county administrator have to submit paperwork every single election year to allow that to go through. We would just like to add that as long as there is no change, they could conduct a split precinct, and as long as the state board didn't withdraw, so still leaving the responsibility with the state board that they can withdraw that at any time.
Thank you, Delegate. Is there anybody in the room who would like to speak in support of this?
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the subcommittee. I'm Katie Boyle with the Virginia Association of Counties, and we do support this bill. Now that we have a couple of years of experience with the split precinct waiver process, we have seen some localities have to submit the same waiver year after year when there hasn't been any change in the circumstances that prompted the waiver. And so you're able to ask for a waiver if you're unable to kind of heal that split. And for counties, that means you couldn't draw another precinct. You have to have at least 100 voters. And so you have some situations that are unlikely to change. And so this would provide some administrative efficiencies for the localities and actually for the state as well, and not having to resubmit for the same waiver when there's been no change in the circumstances. So thank you very much, and appreciate the patron bringing it forward.
Thanks, Ms. Boyle. Do we have anybody else in the audience? Anybody against? Anybody online? Any questions from the committee? Oh, we do have somebody online, sorry. Okay, we have two folks online. No, this is for a different bill. Oh, we have one.
Sorry.
Is it Gail? Okay. Galen Knoyton, you're up.
I'm sorry, we have no position on this particular bill right here. That wasn't supposed to be on there. Thank you.
It's good that you're monitoring us. Thank you. Delegate, last word.
I appreciate your consideration to move this forward.
Thank you. Do we have a motion?
I'll move to report.
We have a motion.
Substitute motion.
We have a substitute motion.
I motion to lay this bill on the table.
We have a motion laid on the table that's non-debatable. The clerk will open the roll. The clerk will close the roll. The bill has been tabled 5-3. Thank you, Delegate.
Thank you.
I'm sorry,
I have another
go.
bill.
Yeah,
I can,
sure. Second bill.
Okay, thank you so much. The next bill is House Bill 907.
Delegate.
Thank you. This bill would require receipts after you vote, to kind of just give the very short answer. I I understand that as I maybe went to the store this morning and bought my Diet Dr. Pepper, that I was able to get a receipt for that. As many things that we do, whether it's as simple as buying something at a store or paying our taxes, we get a receipt. We understand the importance of voting and feel like that is certainly a worthy cause to ensure that your vote is verified and documented. Election receipts would provide voters with a familiar and easily understandable record of their actions, and I certainly would support that. And just like you check any receipt to make sure you were charged correctly, an election receipt allows voters to verify that their choices were accurately recorded. So for documentation, familiarity, verification purposes, recording purposes, we felt like this was a great step forward in order to do that. I would like to say that I do understand at the onset of this, we know that voting machines, and I even have a picture of one here, there's several of them that are certified by the state. It was our understanding that software updates could provide that receipt and could provide that capability. After speaking with folks, I realized that that is a problem, and currently software updates and things of that nature would create certainly at least a timing issue in order to record that. So I understand that that's an issue and talked to some folks about it. And so I'm happy to continue this if necessary in order to gain more information and to also make sure that we're doing this properly.
Thank you, Delegate. Yeah, I have a couple, I think this, if we were to pass this, it would have to go to appropriations because there's probably a fiscal impact. Did you do a budget amendment?
Yes, sir, I did. And actually, there is no fiscal impact to the state. Yes, sir. But I did put a budget amendment in there, but we did get a fiscal impact statement back, and there is none.
Delegate O'Quinn.
Mr. Chair, I want to make sure I heard the patron right. So it sounded like that you would like to continue to try to maybe find a way to get at this. And I heard you say carry over. Is that, would a motion to carry over to 2025 be?
That would be an order,
motion.
Yes, sir. I appreciate that, Delegate O'Quinn.
Mr. Chair, I would make that motion to carry House Bill 907 over to 2025.
Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second. The motion is to carry it over to 2025. The clerk will open the roll. It's a voice vote. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. All those in favor of carrying it over to 2025?
Aye.
Okay, opposed? All right, it's been carried over unanimously, and yet we can work on this together. This is great. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Committee.
All right, I've communicated with Delegate Cole on his HB 1314, and we're going to also make a motion to carry that over to 2025. So
moved. Second.
All right, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, the bill has been carried over to 2025. Do we have any other further?
Delegate Griffin.
Delegate Griffin. All right, not last but not least, come on up. Thank you, Delegate.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a pretty simple bill to make it affordable for citizens of Virginia that qualify to get a copy of the voter rolls. So right now, if you're kind of a startup candidate for public office in Virginia, if you want to run for statewide office, and the first thing I would think that you would want is a list of who all the registered voters are, the most updated list. If you apply to the Department of Elections for that, it's going to cost you about $30,000. And if you're in a year like this, there's 3 elections, right? So you want the most up-to-date data. So you start off at the beginning of the year wanting to put your mail list together. It's going to be $30,000 to get the list, but then we have the presidential primary, so those names are going to change a little bit. Your information is going to be updated a little bit after that primary. So then you're going to want to get that list a second time to make sure that your mail is up to date. So you got to pay $30,000 more to get that second list. But wait, in Virginia, there's another election this year, right? There's 3 elections this year. So each time we have an election, that data is going to change a little bit. It's going to need to be updated. And you're going to have to pay another $30,000 for that list. I've had trouble as I've thought about other areas of government where we're charging a price or a fee to the citizens and the taxpayers that live here and getting such a huge windfall from it, right? This is essentially a spreadsheet of the registered voters. Obviously, the Department of Elections is going to have that on hand. And so this is just something it's this information, I believe it belongs to Virginians that qualify for it. Remember, the law still is that you have to be running for office, or you have to have like an actual reason to ask for this. But the price is just too much. So it basically changes a couple of words in the statute. Right now, we give full authority to the Department of Elections to kind of determine whatever price they want, a reasonable price. And right now, it's about $30,000. So we basically just say, if you want a digital list, it becomes free under this. Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate. That's a very good description. Unfortunately, I have to go. I'm going to turn the chairmanship over to my right here, Delegate Converse Fowler will be chairing the rest of the meeting. And we do have some folks online that are going to want to speak to this. Thank you very much. Sorry, I have to get cracking.
Thank you, Delegate. Do we have anyone here to speak in favor of the bill? Come forward. Thank you.
Hi, good morning. My name is Nancy Smith, and I'm with Middle Reservation PAC, and we are in support of HB 1532. Virginia is one of the most expensive states in the country to purchase the voter file. For example, New York, North Carolina, Ohio, and Oklahoma charge nothing. Colorado is $50, Delaware is $25, Maryland is $125, Minnesota is $51, and Michigan is $23. I'll break down the cost of what Delegate Griffin mentioned in terms of that $30,000. To purchase the entire state voter file, which our organization did for a number of years, is roughly $5,000 to $6,000. Once you add on general election, primaries, specials, it runs about $25,000 to $30,000 to keep up with all of the elections in Virginia in a state that has elections every year. Our purpose, of course, as a legally allowable group was to get out the vote activities and support candidates. So it was a huge cut into our budget every year to raise the money from donors to then turn around and spend upwards of $25,000 to $30,000 to maintain the voter file on a timely basis. And there are as you may know, there are 6 million voters in Virginia. So we are not the largest state, but we are a large state, and that's a lot of data. I just want to also sort of mention that an organization like ours as a PAC obviously has more access, but small grassroots groups who are just trying to get started really find this unaffordable. In addition, the income that comes in from the state voter file, and the work, of course, is done by elect, that money goes back into the general fund, so those funds are not being used by the department that is actually charged with processing and getting that information out.
Thank you. I think our time's running out. Is there anyone else here to speak? And thank you for being here. Is there anyone else to speak?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Clarabelle Wheeler, Albemarle County Electoral Board, speaking for myself. What Ms. Smith just said needs to be repeated. Of all the 50 states in the Union, Virginia ranks 5th or 6th, depending upon when you gather the data, in the cost for her registered voter list. The National Voter Registration Act requires maintenance of all lists, accurate and current. So it's part of elect's duty. It's part of their routine job. They must do it. The lists are readily there. When the code was written to say the charges are reasonable, it referred mostly to paper charges. Well, certainly if you're going to produce a paper list of 6 million plus voters, that's a lot of cost. But if all you have to do is look at your computer screen and say, "Dip, Dinwiddie," click and send, it costs virtually nothing. And that's what we're asking, for everyone to have access to the voter list under the current restrictions of who can purchase: candidates, parties, nonprofit doing certain work. So it needs to be reduced to no charge at all so that everyone can enter into the practice of contacting their voters.
Thank you, Ms. Wheeler. Is there anyone else speaking in favor? Anyone speaking against the bill? We do have some speakers online. Delegate Price, did you want to go ahead and ask a question? Okay. All right. Online, first we have Aaron Joyce. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Aaron Joyce. I'm a volunteer administrator for Electoral Process Education Corporation. We're a small nonprofit charity devoted to voter participation and education, specifically educating people on modern-day election systems. We support HB 1532 for the reasons stated already, and we also think it would help Virginia come into more compliance, shall we say, with Section 8 of the NVRA and the reasonable provision, we find that these excessive charges effectively price out smaller groups. It appears on the basic charges now that only the most well-heeled and well-funded political groups can participate in the political process if they qualify, which our group does. And so programs such as bringing on younger Virginia residents to teach them about the election process, to help inspire them to be the next leaders, the next generation of helping to inspire people to participate. And not only that, understand the most cutting edge data analytics and the privacy protections that are inherent in this participation pretty much go by the wayside because of these costs. So we think by bringing Virginia into compliance with NVRA, with Section 8, will place the state among states that don't charge and would make it a leader. And we just think this is an opportunity for Virginia to lead on what should be a bipartisan issue. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Joyce. Lindsay Z., the Virginia Institute Action. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you. Good morning, Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Lindsay Zaya, and I am with Virginia Institute Action. We support HB 1532. Virginia's cost to purchase the voter roll is much higher than many other states, as you've heard in this meeting. And some states offer the statewide voter registration lists for free. Most data sets in Virginia that are kept by the state and are permitted to be accessible by members of the public are freely available through the Virginia Open Data Portal. Passing this bill would be a timely update to modernize and match the format that the voter roll data is provided in currently via electronic means versus production costs that previously were incurred if hard copies of the voter roll needed to be provided to the individuals requesting and eligible for the voter roll. And for these reasons, we ask you to please pass HB 1532. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Delegate Price.
Yes, I had a question for the patron or for someone maybe with the department, but I know it was stated that we can see the impact statement for the $231,562. The impact statement says that would be from the Department of Elections, but we heard testimony that was not going to the department, it was going to the general fund. Do you know where that money would actually be coming from?
So I'll let Ms. Beals correct me if I'm wrong. I asked her this question this week. My understanding is that money does go to the general fund for the Commonwealth.
And follow-up question?
Delegate Price.
And so then I know that means that your bill would not need a budget amendment, but have we considered what that might be impacting from the general fund, or is it just an assumption that the general fund can take the hit?
I do think I'm here to represent voters, right? Not to represent, the budget of the government. So really what's key to me is what do my constituents need? And that's really how I approach this. But from the general fund, obviously, I think we all know how much money is actually in that general fund. So I don't think I hate to say $200,000 is not significant, but when we're talking about the billions of dollars of the Commonwealth, I'll leave it there.
Delegate Price, follow-up? No. Delegate O'Quinn?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have a question, I think, for Department of Elections.
Come up, Ms. Beal. Thank you. Delegate O'Quinn?
Thank you. So if I decide that I want to run for governor and I form O'Quinn for Virginia, and I say, first thing I need is a voter list. So let me hit up the Department of Elections. So then when I do that, I make the request to you, you run the list, you send me the invoice. I guess my first question is, what would that roughly cost if I wanted the whole statewide list, right, just today?
Chair Converse Fowler, Delegate O'Quinn, that would be about $5,000 for the statewide registered voter list.
Delegate O'Quinn, follow up.
Madam Chair, so then let's say that I decide, okay, this is allowed. I'm a terrible statewide candidate. I don't want to run for governor anymore. Forget that. And Mill Day Direct Mail Incorporated decides they might like to have that same list that I just purchased from you, am I bound whatsoever with that list to expressly use it for contacting voters only, or could that list be monetized and used for something else?
Madam Chair, Delegate O'Quinn, you sign something when you procure a list that says you will only use it for your intended purpose. Also, it's clear in the code who is eligible to receive a voter list.
Madam Chair, follow up.
Yes, Delegate O'Quinn.
Okay, so what happens if, in this scenario, I withdraw as a statewide candidate? I still have a fairly new list, and I give it to him anyway, or I sell it to him anyway. What's the recourse?
We would prefer you not do that.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Question, I have a question. What would, if this list, could you just declare you're a candidate to get the list without in this bill without any cost? So it could be accessible to someone who declares they're a candidate and then just gets the list for free and then maybe doesn't run.
Madam Chair, are you speaking under this bill?
Yes,
what would be possible?
Yes.
I would think that, yes, that would be possible. You could declare it and you would be able, I guess his bill makes it no cost to receive it.
Thank you. Do I have this committee operates on motion?
I move to lay on the table.
Second.
All right, properly moved and seconded. Can we please open the roll? All right, that bill is laid on the table for 4-3. Thank you very much. All right. Does that conclude our business? It does? Motion. Second. All in favor of adjourning? All right, we are adjourned.